US bombs Iran. Trump unleashes a wider war. Did Pope Leo XIV appoint a bishop to stir up protests against ICE deportations? It seems that the people of the world will pick a side between the seal of God and the mark of the beast. End times are manifesting with severity and rapidity, showing the nearness of the second coming of Christ. Welcome, dear friends, to TIBP Live. Kindly like and share this important prophecy update. The Trump administration has bombed Iran with strikes. President Trump claims have obliterated the country's nuclear enrichment facilities 10 days after Israel launched its attacks on the country. Iran's foreign minister denied that the U.S. strikes has caused a major blow and has accused the U.S. of breaking international law.
Continuation of that breaking news, a U.S. attack on Iran. President Trump speaking to the nation just within the last hour or so, announcing that the U.S. launched strikes on 3 nuclear sites in Iran. He's calling those strikes a spectacular military success. Alice Barr brings us the latest now.
In a dramatic escalation, President Trump tonight ordering U.S. airstrikes on 3 nuclear sites inside Iran.
Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago.
Tehran is threatening retaliation, including closing a strategically important sea passage. Dialogue must prevail to stop the Middle East from falling into a cycle of retaliation. The United States struck 3 key uranium enrichment sites. One of them, for these are the satellite images of that area.
The targets include the Fordo nuclear enrichment facility buried deep under a mountain that only U.S. bunker-busting bombs could reach.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
President Trump had set a 2-week deadline late last week to allow time for a diplomatic solution before changing course. Early Saturday, Iran sent a barrage of missiles into Israel. Israeli forces have been hammering Iranian nuclear and military sites, aiming to destroy the nation's ability to build a nuclear weapon.
I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue.
Immediate reaction coming in from Capitol Hill with Republican Representative Thomas Massie, who introduced a bipartisan war powers resolution last week, saying of the U.S. strikes, quote, "This is not constitutional."
It is quite difficult to assess the extent of the damage because the site is built under the mountains. The United States also bombed the nuclear sites of Natanz, Isfahan. This is Isfahan. Before the United States strikes and afterwards, You can see the difference. You can see the damage inflicted by the bombing. Donald Trump, who promised to end foreign wars, went on live television to announce the attacks that may have just made him yet another wartime president. In the White House, situation with his top security officials, President Trump making the final decision to attack had to calculate what the consequences might be. Will airstrikes against Iran's nuclear site result in attacks on U.S. forces that could start a full-scale war? In these pictures from his stand, you can see and hear the airstrikes hitting one of the 3 nuclear sites. Iran obviously knew this was a possibility, but may have not been expecting it too soon. President Trump had said he would take up 2 weeks to decide whether to take military action at the Pentagon. They want to say this operation is already over. Iran should not respond. This Pentagon map shows warplanes taking off from Missouri in the American heartland and flying a 40-hour round trip to deliver their enormous munitions, 14 bunker buster bombs. What damage did these satellite photographs show the underground nuclear site at Fordo? Before and then after the airstrikes, the B-2 bombers totally obliterated the site, claimed Donald Trump. The U.S. military might haven't actually made a final assessment, but say the facility have been severely damaged. Not destroyed Iran, but severely damaged. He said that it will respond in self-defense. It hasn't said how. Dearest friends, the world is being conditioned to the wars that is taking place now. And the undeniable polarization will intensify as nations take sides in this world conflict. It is very significant in the book of Revelation. It speaks about 2 sides, a religious polarization between the seal of God and the mark of the beast, and those who will stand true when Jesus returns. Did Pope Leo XIV appoint a bishop to stir up protests against ICE deportations? In a move that has sparked widespread controversy, Pope Leo has appointed a bishop whose role appears to be mobilizing priests against ICE deportation in California. This appointment is being interpreted by many as a direct challenge to the immigration enforcement policies of the Trump administration. It is fueling growing tensions between religious institutions and federal authorities.
This is so cool. I had to jump on and say something. So, the first bishop appointed by Pope Leo, Bishop Michael Pham in San Diego, is mobilizing his priests to accompany migrants to their trials and having them go to court with them to help them through the process and to hopefully deter ICE from arresting them when they're showing up to go to their hearings. This is like the coolest thing I've ever heard of. So we're finally seeing the church mobilize to protect the migrants as we are commanded to by Jesus. I love this. Love Pope Leo. Love it.
According to Catholic priest Rich Vittel, who published a video on TikTok, Pope Leo XIV's very first appointment of a Bishop Michael Pham, a Vietnamese immigrant, was intended to be seen as a political message because this bishop is encouraging his priests to accompany migrants to their court appointments in an effort to deter ICE from arresting them when they show up for their hearings. Newsweek magazine confirmed that Pope Leo appointed a bishop specifically tasked with organizing resistance, fueling debate over the church's involvement in political activism. June 13, 2025. Newsweek published an article, Pope Leo's first U.S. bishop takes action against Trump migrant crackdown. and expressed the following: "This call to action by Catholic leaders highlights growing faith-based opposition to President Donald Trump's mass deportation policy, which has drawn criticisms from religious groups and the Vatican. The Catholic Church's action are contributing to a broader push for open borders under the guise of humanitarian concern, effectively encouraging civil resistance against U.S. immigration law. Those who support Trump's immigration policies see this move by the Catholic Church as a politically charged maneuver that undermines national sovereignty and law enforcement, adding layer of strain to an already polarized political climate." Dearest friends, this type of behavior is nothing new. Historically, in non-Catholic countries, Rome has often operated behind the scenes to stabilize nations and steer political and social upheavals in ways that ultimately serve the interests of the Church in various eras, particularly during the Reformation and the rise of Protestant monarchies. The Jesuits were known for their covert missions, infiltrating courts, influencing education, and even involving themselves in plots and revolts aimed at toppling government seen as hostile to papal authority. Their strategy frequently involved fomenting unrest and manipulating public sentiments, not necessarily to support the people's cause, but to shift to the balance of power in favor of Catholic dominance. These efforts, though often cloaked in religious or moral language, were part of a sinister plan to expand the reach of Rome, sometimes at the cost of national sovereignty and civil stability. Ellen G. White, a co-founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, warns that the Protestant world is blindly allowing Rome to regain power and influence under a guise of peace and unity. She describes a gradual resurgence of papal authority that is embedding itself in key areas of society and government. This influence will eventually lead to a revival of past forms of persecution against those who remain faithful to the Bible and Jesus, especially Sabbath keepers. Dear friends, we must be found faithful when Jesus returns. And there will be a terrible polarization between the seal of God and the mark of the beast, that the nations of the world will be conditioned to take sides. Are you on the Lord's side? Are you in the side of peace? Kindly type in the comment section, peace can only be found in Jesus. Peace can only be found in Jesus. Thank you, dearest friends. Hope you are blessed and encouraged by this prophecy update and continue to preach truth found in Bible prophecy.